So today we're going to talk about from skin to brain, the science of the super patch. And this technology has been 14, 15 years in the making of research and development, iterative processes. There has been an incredible product roadmap that's gotten us to today, and we're going to talk about all of that, but we're really going to talk about the underlying science, the underlying theories and mechanisms that allow us to have such a profound technology. So there's some premises that I think make a lot of sense that we all as healthcare providers and professionals will understand that optimal neurology is a primary requirement for optimal health, right? Our body functions at optimum efficiency when the networks managing our body and mind are in balance. And the autonomic system is a part of that peripheral nervous system responsible for regulating all of those things that we don't think about, right? So we don't think about walking, we don't think about standing, we don't think about breathing, we don't think about consciously managing our pain. And all of these things happen through a very complex communication loop, neural networks that regulate the different various processes without actually thinking about them. Unfortunately, genetics, injury, illness, drugs, stress, and other trauma factors compromise this system, and misalignment within the communication of the neural networks can trigger dysregulation of physiological, emotional, and psychological function. So what does this mean? So in the big scheme of things, our neurology controls everything, right? So every physical, biological, chemical, emotional, psychological function in our body has a neurological regulation to it. There's a neurological control, a neurological, call it a program that regulates all those different things in our physiology. And if we look at the pyramid of our physiology, we have the biophysics, the ambulatory, our limbs, all those things that involve movement, standing posture. Above that is our biology. Above that is our biochemistry. And above all of it is our central nervous system, our neurology. And our CNS can impact all three of those things at the same time or independently. And there's usually a cascade of wellness. If things are, if the CNS and our mind is working, if healthy neurology, we're going to see a cascade of wellness. If there's something off in our CNS, something off in our neurology, we're going to see a cascade of problems, right? And I think we've all seen that as healthcare providers, where one thing leads to another thing, leads to nothing, and then all of a sudden somebody's in bed and they can't get out. But I think these are all table stakes of us understanding what makes our technology and what makes the science so profound, right? So how does our neurology impact our health? Optimal neurology equals optimal function. So when our neurology is optimized, when it's operating at its best possible level, whatever that level is for each individual, we're gonna have a pain-free life. We're gonna have more energy. We're gonna have the best possible sleep. We're gonna have better mobility, more vitality, more strength. We're going to have better posture and stability. Cognitive performance is going to be optimal. We're going to have a less stressful experience during the day. Our mood's going to be better, and our metabolism, among other things, is going to be optimized. When our neurology is not functioning optimally, we're gonna feel it, and we're gonna see it, right? We're gonna have aches and pains. We're gonna have low energy. We're gonna wake up tired because we didn't sleep well. Mobility is going to be challenged. We might even have neuropathy issues. Recovery from illness, recovery from injury is going to be compromised. We're going to absorb that stress, that oxidative, that horrible thing that it does to our body. We're going to see cognitive decline, whether it's memory, whether it's recall, whether it's, executive function, decision making. Metabolism gets compromised. Mood and anxiety obviously become impairing factors in a quality of life. Right. So we want to get to the green. We want to get out of the orange and the red. We want to have a vital, healthy neurology, right? And so then the question is, so great, we want a healthy neurology, we want a healthy mind, we want great operation of our central nervous system. Then the question begs, well, what is neurology? What is optimal neurology? How do you measure it, right? How do you identify it? And how do you help it? So these are all the questions that we were asking in 2009 and 2010, and since we started, R&D. Okay, so how do we get to what's healthy, what's optimal because we got to be able to identify where it's a level set and where to get to, right? So we took some unique approaches to solving that problem. So measuring optimal neurology. So the gold standard for normative EEG is the Loretta database in the University of Zurich. It's managed by the Key Institute, and it's a database of over 200,000 EEG readings from age 2 to 85. Okay, now that's a lot of data. Okay, and this is the data that's used to investigate neural networks, to come to an understanding of how are those neural networks organized, how are they developing, how are they out of this regular function, and really it's the backbone of EEG studies and biofeedback research. Okay, this is where they go to understand the function of our mind as a normative database, and we've been using and studying the data here going on to 15 years now. So we reached out to them and at the very beginning of our journey because I wanted to understand what causes neurological dysfunction and how do you control that communication. So what is obvious to us, and I think obvious to everybody in this call, is that the language of our mind is brain waves. Alpha, beta, delta, theta, gamma. That's how our mind communicates with itself internally, with the different networks that exist. And that's how it sends information from the central nervous system through its peripheral nervous system, through action potentials and neural signals. And that was the question that I was asking of leading scientists and neuroscientists of, okay, because of my mom's MS condition, to talk to me about these signals. They're saying that, well, because of demyelination, the neural signal isn't getting through. And my question is, well, what's the neural signal, right? You keep saying that, oh, the water's not getting through the pipes. Well, talk to me about the water. Talk to me about that information. And what became abundantly clear was that in 2009, 2010, 2008, our understanding, the world's understanding, science's understanding of the neural code was very rudimentary. We knew something was happening, and then we could see the brain waves, but it wasn't clear enough in terms of actually how the communication happened and what was the actual bits and bytes of information. But we knew the data was there, so we had the data to start working on it. And what did we do from that point? So our approach to understanding, so we developed some proprietary algorithmic analysis tools. So basically, I'm a geek. I was in I'm a software engineer by education, by training. I worked in encryption and security software for a long period of time. And over a period of time, I was able to write code. I was able to write programs, machine learning tools that allowed me to apply analysis to this metadata, to this massive sets of data that were sitting inside the Loretta database, because the software program that they provided allowed for some rudimentary imaging, identification. What it didn't allow was for me to understand the regulatory processes, right? The process actually control those very critical health and wellness functions that we take for granted every day. So this approach and development process revealed some remarkable understandings and proprietary breakthroughs since then. So over time, we've had some incredible breakthroughs of our understanding of how that works. So the first breakthrough to a solution. So, when we take a look at our neurology, I think we'll all agree that it is the most complex thing that we know. Our neurology is actually more complex than the cosmos. So, the James Webb Telescope is out there and it's looking at the cosmos and the beginning of time and all these different things. I will argue that our neurology is infinitely more complex, and our mind is infinitely more complex than the cosmos out there. There's more going on in here than there's going on out there, right? So scientists and data scientists at MIT wanted to map the connectivity of our mind and the different networks, and they have supercomputers, and they started topographically, algebraically mapping the different connectivity between the different neural networks, and they reached 11 dimensions of connectivity. Now, everybody on this call, I believe, we probably operate on 3 dimensions. There might be 1 or 2 that might have reached a higher level of development, but for the rest of us mortals, we operate on 3 dimensions. Our mind, what we can show through scientific topography mapping, is operating at 11 dimensions of connectivity. That just gives you an idea of how powerful it is, and it's doing this instantly all the time from the minute that we're born. Probably before we're born, but we only measure it after we're born. And so what I was looking for was a neurodevelopment sequence. So the theory was this: we go from a neural groove, a microscopic thing, and we develop it in the most complex thing that we know, which is our neurology. This happens in 9 months. So my theory was there's got to be a development sequence. There needs to be a blueprint of this development, right? The neurology is developing. It's telling itself what needs to happen. The neural groove becomes our brainstem. The brainstem becomes central nervous system. A spinal column pops out, and all this amazing neurology in peripheral nervous system completely develops in 9 months. There has to be a blueprint, and that blueprint's going to be expressed, has to be expressed as brainwaves because that's the language of the mind. So I was looking for this development sequence, right? And over a period of 3 years, we finished the coding. In another 3 years, we were able to find the neurodevelopment sequence that I believe leads to the development of this different autonomic functions that we take for advantage. So this is proprietary information. This took years and years to find and develop and to fine tune. We don't share this information because this really is the core understanding and intellectual property that we have. So, but that wasn't enough. So once we understand that we have this blueprint, this development sequence, we have to agree that there needs to be a regulatory process that controls that blueprint. It's like having a blueprint for a house. Great, we got a blueprint for a house. We also need a site supervisor to make sure that's being built the correct way. Our neurology might, and this is all thinking like an engineer, that yeah, we have this code is doing a bunch of calculations, but there needs to be a checksum to make sure those calculations are happening correctly. And that's what the next development was, the next breakthrough was a neuroregulatory process that if there's these development sequences, there also need to be regulatory processes that govern the development of these sequences. And we were able to decipher and decode these processes as a set of complex neurosignals. Again, another few years of development and R&D over the last, not a few years, 12 years, to develop these and to deduce these different regulatory processes for things like pain management, sleep management, mobility, vestibular response, stress management. All of these have neuroregulatory processes that we've deduced that are set of very complex sine waves that we've deduced that regulate these different processes. And this is because of the software that we developed. This is because of the R&D that we've developed, and this is because of the measuring and the evaluation that we can do with generally accepted products out there. So when we measure this change and we measure these things, we're using, number one, the data that's already there. But when we measure it against new data, we have this comparative that shows us the changes that we're making. So we use FDA registered EEG sets, we use FDA registered software to prove our concepts. So how do we fix it? So remember we talked about at the beginning that these programs, these neural networks get stuck, compromised, damaged. And the reality is, so how do we assist those? How do we correct them and get them back to factory reset? How do we get them back to operating at a normal function or an optimal function, right? And the best way to do that, to correct neural signals, would be generate a non-invasive process that could greatly compensate those dysregulated signals, right? So remember, these are just waves. And if we want to influence waves, we have to rely on interference, wave interference. It's just interference math. You have constructive interference and you have destructive interference. Constructive interference is when you can introduce a new signal to a previous signal, just waves, that'll help correct or amplify its function. A destructive signal is one that comes in and actually flatlines and it makes it zero. So we want to know, how do we affect and correct those complex signals and get them back to normal function? And the best way that we figured out was to generate compensatory signals to do that. So how do we do that? What options do we have? So how do you generate compensatory signals to our body? We can send electrical shock through our system. Hopefully that might do something. It's quite painful. There's new developments of transcranial stimulation. Many of you might have seen that, where they put a headset on your head and they're blasting frequencies into our cranium, hoping to reset something. There's neurofeedback technologies where you're watching things and the information is coming through your mind and you're doing different activities, trying to retrain and trigger neuroplasticity. There's invasive processes where neural implants are planted into our body, into our spine, into our skull, or into our vagus nerve to stimulate to get a response. But the reality is our body is already receiving tons of information through our peripheral nervous system without any extra energy. So our eyes are receiving information, right? photons of light are coming in, and magically our neurology, our mind is organizing those photons into images, and it's stereophonically, you know, coordinating the sound that's coming together. I mean, we're already doing some magical things with our sight and our sound, but there's an immense amount of information also coming through our skin. Our skin is number one of the largest organs in our body. It used to be the largest organ. Now they found another set of fascia underneath our skin, which actually connects all of our different organs together. Now that is the largest organ that they decided. But the skin is pretty pervasive in terms of sending information to our mind. And that's what we looked at in terms of how do we send signals to our mind. So, you know, our goal was, can we do that? Can we send that signal to our mind? And there is a ton of research out there that says that haptic perception, vibrotactile stimulation, would reduce the flight or fight sympathetic response when it isn't needed, allowing the body to rapidly restore to its natural homeostasis or balance, right? And so what's great is, Susan, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to send you this deck, and it's got all the research reference at the back, so everything that I say. So for all of us keeners out there that like to read it, you guys can have a blast. It makes for a wonderful weekend of reading those 67 research papers. But what it does is that these are things that we might or might not know, we can take for granted. But this research already says that, hey, skin stimulation can really affect our neurology, right? So this is what we started evaluating and started looking at. And so there's a couple of things that we're harnessing. We're harnessing sensation, we're harnessing perception. And research has expanded on this idea of haptic perception and proposed a more extensive theory called the pattern theory of haptic perception. This theory explains how the brain interprets information from the entire somatosensory system as a whole. So it says that when we feel a sensation on our skin through a specific pattern of nerves that are activated, it's eventually decoded by the brain. So basically, it's proposing that the different skin cells, the different free nerve endings, the different receptors can collaboratively generate very complex signals that are interpreted by our mind. And this theory was first hypothesized as a study on pain and its perception, but it's expanded beyond that our brain can actually recognize very specific patterns and combinations of receptors, and that there are no unique or specific circuits for any distinct sensation. So in English, what that means is our mind will recognize any sensation once it's perceived it, no matter where it is specifically on the body. So in layman's terms, if somebody pinched you on your hand, on your arm, you would also feel the same sensation when somebody pinched you on your back. At a higher level, if we were all in the room, we did an experiment, Susan, you and I've talked about before. If we were sitting side by side and I said, hey, listen, close your eyes for a minute and put out your hand. And I drew the number 8 on your hand and asked you what I drew on your hand, you say, well, you drew the number 8. Now think about that. Somehow your skin was able to perceive that slightest touch and send the neurosignal for the number 8 to your mind. And your mind will recognize that 8. It would say, oh, that's the number 8. This is what it is. And all the relationships we have with that number. Doesn't matter what we do. It could be 4, could be 3, could be A, could be B, could be whatever. And our skin will be able to coordinate that information, send it instantly to our mind to recognize it, right? Just like if your eyes were still closed and I put this pen in your hand and I say, what's that? You'd say it's a pen. So our skin's ability to send complex signals to our mind, which can recall, decode, interpret it, is unlimited. What we're sending with our patches, so here we have our patch. So I'm going to pull this up the screen. So with our patch, we see those ridges on it, okay? Those ridges are very precise. And when they come in contact with our skin, they're also, instead of the number 8, they're sending this signal. This signal is already pre-programmed in our mind, okay? Because our pain regulation is already pre-programmed. It's the same for all of us. And so all we're doing is reproducing the normative signal that we need for optimal pain performance. If this was the pain patch, this is the defend pad actually. So that's what we're doing. We are restoring the normative neurological function through skin sensation. And it's not our science that's saying it. This is science that's Nobel Prize winning stuff. So let me get to that. So what we did is we hacked and harnessed haptic perception. And so we used neural decoding of the human haptic response. So first we figured out what the code needed to be, what the signals needed to be. Then we figured out how to send those signals through our skin. And what's really interesting is in 2001, Dr. Papatoupian and Dr. Julius won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine for actually discovering the exact transducers in our skin that generate the action potential, right? They actually found the exact mechanism of action that generates the different signals. We always knew that these different cells and free nerve cells were actually generating a signal, but we didn't know the exact mechanism of action. So the exact mechanism of action are these transducers called piezo 1 and piezo 2, which play an amazing role in not just sending signals, but overall health and wellness. And the research is still ongoing, that through touch, we can send very complex signals to our mind. So this was a breakthrough. This gave us even more clarity of how to channel and organize our products to deliver more efficacy. This is why we went from possibly having 2 or 3 patches to having 11 and more on their way, because we can actually really precisely build some very complex patterns and complex stimulation responses. So that's wonderful. And so what's our innovation? Our innovation is real simple. Every bodily function has a neural code, including breathing, walking, balance, pain management, stress, sleep. I mean, you name it, there's a neural code that controls it. These codes get damaged or stuck for a million reasons, right? Lead to poor health, poor wellness, poor performance. The ridges on the patches are like QR codes that help repair those neural codes, allowing our body to operate at our mind and body to operate at the highest level. All of the patches will have a unique braille pattern on there. So what we've developed is braille for the brain. Each patch triggers a different response on our skin that's interpreted by our mind, which corrects compromised signals. As soon as those compromised signals are repaired and restored, we started seeing an immediate cascade of benefits. And because there's no ingestion involved, because there's no delay involved, because our neurological system operates almost at the speed of light, the response is immediate. This isn't try it for 30 days, you're going to feel something. You're going to feel the benefits very quickly. So what does it mean? So we call our technology vibrotactile trigger technology. And so here's our mind. So this is actually an image from a brain mapping tool that we have. You put the EEG set on, you look at the minute. So here's a brain that's having some neurological dysfunction. It's hyperactive. It's hypo in some other places, but mostly it's hyper. It's outside normative operation. We put the patch on. This is with the Liberty patch. We put the patch on, and we see overall neurological homeostasis. Reset that mind in seconds. This is not days. This is seconds, right? And we know that neurological homeostasis is going to lead to physiological homeostasis. So this is why this is so important. And this is why this is so powerful, because we finally have a tool that can start at the top of our wellness, which is our neurology, and then work down. We have a top-down solution that can impact our biology, chemistry, and physiology. Simple. People say, how does it work? It's great. You take a patch, it triggers a response, it affects our body and the central nervous system, and then we feel the difference. What we've been able to do is take a very complex and a very profound science and make it into an elegant solution that's drug-free, that's safe, doesn't have side effects, it's easy to use, that's friendly, that's affordable, right? So those are all the key things. And what we've done to validate all of these claims is we've done a number of studies and more on the way that validate the efficacy of our technology, because as healthcare practitioners, we understand that we need to be able to validate the claims that we make, right? So this isn't saying, hey, trust me. This is like, we've done the work, we've invested in the R&D, we've invested in the proof of it and the validation of it. So we can say we have improved power and strength. We can say we have improved balance stability. We can say we have improved pain and discomfort management. We have improved neural wellness. We have improved sleep. We have improved cognitive performance. We can say all these things because we've done the work and done the science and done the research to validate the claims that we make, which gives us an undeniable opportunity and unassailable advantage in the world of marketing, right? Because we've spent 12, 15 years making the best possible product. To make it the best known, these are table stakes. These are things that need to exist of validation, proof, right? Because we all know that healthcare practitioners are not going to recommend a product that they can't say, hey, by the way, the study's been done, it's safe, it's valid, and it's registered, right? And so what is that? Why is that important? So these are just some fun facts. You know, our Liberty Patch is $1 million patch that can help anyone live longer. So studies show that the Liberty Patch technology improves strength and balance. Enhanced balance and grip strength are recognized as biomarkers for longer living. They're actual proven biomarkers for longevity. So Liberty Patch really is a new frontier in the battle for vitality, energy, and longevity. Live longer and healthier now and reverse aging with Liberty Patch. So this is what happens. You put the Liberty Patch on, our balance stability improves by 31%, and our grip strength improves from 10 to 20%. Instantly, in seconds, not a week, not a month, not a year later. No, you don't have to change your nutrition, you don't have to change your diet, you don't have to change anything. Your lifestyle, immediately your biological age reduces. Nothing in the world does this. And it's validated, it's proven, you can test it yourself, and you can share that with anyone in the world, right? So what separates us as a product? What separates us as a company? 100% drug-free, immediate proven benefits, million happy customers, FDA registered, clinical proof, 30-day money-back guarantee, made right in the United States of America, 95% positive user rating. It was like 95%. I've got news flash. Nothing's 100%, right? There will always be some people that don't get a response, and it's unfortunate. But thankfully, they're not going to be hurt because they ingested something or it's not a reversible thing. Just peel it off. It's real easy to reverse whatever they don't want to do. And this is what separates us. So we've got solutions for pain, for sleep, for energy, for stress, for mobility, for athletic performance, for metabolic response. Every single patch from an economic model is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of people that need that solution, right? So, and they're easy to use, they're easy to recommend, they're easy to store, they don't expire. So we don't get into a challenge of saying, oh, you know what, if I don't eat these vitamins, they're going to expire. We don't have that case, right? They're easy to ship, they're easy to transport. If we have clinics, they're easy to store. They don't take up a lot of space to have a super patch corner. A lot of people are getting these little spinorama things. They put all the patches on. It looks pretty cool in their clinics because they can show them the product, they can show them what it does, and it's really like Christmas. Here's all the different references. But Susan, I'll make sure you get a copy of this for you as well as you, Sterling, and then you're more than happy to share that with your colleagues and different things. I'm going to stop right there. And so that's what separates us from everything else in the world. It's the validation, it's the science, it's the years of R&D, and it's the regulatory check marks. And I know we're not all big fans of regulatory, but the reality is if we stay within the guardrails, we can help more people, right? Because we don't, speed bumps just get in the way. And that's what separates this opportunity from any other opportunity out there from a product standpoint. What we need to do now to help reach as many people as possible is have the right people, the right team together so we can share it, educate, and help as many people as possible.